Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are looking at Season 2, Episode 8 of Glitch Text, Settling the Score. This was the episode that took my opinion of the Miko is a glitch theory and turned it right on its head. This was the episode. But do remember, I still don't believe that Miko nor any of the other techs or even Barbara are glitches per se. A glitch is by definition a malfunctioning and undirected set of pixels, and a deliberately created, fully intelligent and aware person made of pixels is by very definition not a glitch. However, I am now 75% sure that Miko at the very least, if not several other techs, has an artificial body. Now, I am not going to spoil the sudden and jarring plot twist in the show that upset my theories this hard. It is, however, glaringly obvious, and I trust that my wonderful viewers can spot it on their own. Now, my theories were first that the entire town of Bailey is a simulation. Just like in the Buds episode, the real humans behind our Miko 5 and Mitch and a company are trapped in their respective bubbles controlling their respective digital clones. However, the show creator Dan Milano has dropped some word of creator that the town of Bailey is comprised of at least some real physical matter that can be damaged and replaced with pixels. If any of the town is physical, that rules out a Matrix-like pod situation. However, now I am sure that at least some of the residents are pixel-based life forms, and I am almost as sure that Miko is one of these. How are their bodies generated? How are their intelligences maintained? The questions are numberless, but once again, I don't think Miko is a glitch. She is rather the thing that the glitches are but a shadow of. However, the revelation came in a moment, and there is so much more in this episode than that one moment. Miko and Five blossom into wonderful developed characters, and the show positively struts their character development out on a catwalk. Let's go back to the beginning. Do you remember how the show started? Fives was overly cautious, and the other techs considered him such a non-entity that they couldn't remember his name after working with him for weeks. Even Hanish, who is by definition nice and kind, couldn't remember Five's name. Five lacked confidence on every level, and Miko was nearly his exact opposite. She had confidence in spades. However, she was incredibly self-absorbed. She dragged Five along with her without much consideration for his point of view or his desires in the matter. Despite having battled Fives countless times online, his High Five, she barely remembered even his screen name. So, here we have what I consider to be the primary character flaw of each character. Five lacks confidence so much that it impairs his ability to be useful to his teammates, and Miko is so self-absorbed and overconfident that she is rude almost to the point of cruelty. Now, a creator gave their creations flaws so that they can battle and overcome those flaws in the course of the story. Miko and Five have both been slowly grinding their way through side quests over these 2 seasons, Five growing more obviously confident and Miko growing more sympathetic to her fellow techs and her family. Don't get me wrong, Five was never a coward and Miko was never deliberately cruel. Five literally made himself bait for a 2-story tall Pokemonster, and Miko would never in her worst moments deliberately cause anyone what she considered to be true pain. However, Five did not have the respect of his teammates, and Miko was constantly mocking those she considered worthy of her mockery and forcing everybody around her to interact with her on her own terms. Now, both of them have been getting character development, but for the most part it seemed that Five's character was developing much faster. I had even begun to wonder why the show was leaving Miko behind, as it were. Miko was presented with the same number of situations to grow and to change, to become more aware of her actions and how they affected other people, but she didn't seem to be taking those chances, which actually is pretty in tune with their characters. Fives is naturally grinding and driving himself to grow. Miko, naturally self-absorbed, would not be taking these chances to grow as much. However, in episode 7, Miko seemed to be just as thoughtless as she did in episode 1. That is, I felt like that until I got to this episode. Now, this episode not only displayed the genuine character growth Miko had undergone, but it reached back and highlighted all the moments that I missed in previous episodes that laid the groundwork for the moment in this episode. This episode was like the second half of a set of bookends that makes the other half of the bookend complete. You see, Miko and Five are different people. Their skill sets, their habits are very different. This is shown to us from the very beginning in how they face the challenge of the Hinobi tourney. Five saves Miko from early destruction by stopping her headlong leap into the flaming circle. Miko later saves Five's in turn with her lightning-quick actions. 5 is a grinder. He plans. He takes cautious steps into the unknown. He pauses to look around him and to see what others are doing. He learns as much from observation as he does by personal experience. It makes sense that his character growth was like that, reflecting his personality. Step by step, episode by episode, he gains more confidence and more respect. Miko has a more instinctive personality. She literally leaps before she looks, as we saw again and again. She is self-possessed and often oblivious to the needs of people around her. This makes her incredibly incapable of learning from the others the same way 5 does. She has to experience things herself to understand them. She has to learn on her own. As the saying goes, some people learn by reading, some people learn by watching others, and some folks just gotta lick the electric fence themselves. Miko was so self-absorbed that she didn't even know her best friend's first name until it was literally spelled out for her. So it makes sense that it is going to take getting hit by a clue by 4 of reality before she got drawn out of her childish selfishness. This episode applies that clue by 4 to her emotional head with skill and beauty. Miko has to realize that she is hurting someone just like her before she stops. And stop she does. She is not and was never cruel. She was just oblivious, which unfortunately often has the same effect. And in the light of this moment, the rest of her 2 seasons of character development show up much better, much more clearly. Miko was faced with the chances to look outside herself time and time again, and each time she glanced at the outside world and then immediately turned her attention back to her own interests. But each time she made a memory, a bookmark to remind her that there were other perspectives than her own to consider. And then, no spoilers, this character development pays off in the next episodes. Miko shows compassion and thoughtful consideration for not only her fellow glitch techs, but others even further outside of her personal sphere. And it all feels natural. Then, to the other aspects of this book and episode. Just as Miko had seemed to be overshadowed by 5s in terms of character development in the episodes leading up to this, at first watching 5 seems pushed to the side in this episode for Miko's character development moment. Yet, when you watch the episode again, 5 is quietly displaying all of the slow, quiet character that he has developed. There is no clue by 4 needed for 5. He took each step slowly and methodically, so gradually you didn't notice it. 5 has gone from the blueberry who not even someone as nice as Hanish could remember, to one of the most respected glitch techs in 2 towns, bursting with confidence and leading his fellows with natural ease, while still maintaining his humility. This is exemplified in the final scene of the battle, where not only Mitch, but also the leader of the Dabney team, willingly and enthusiastically follow both 5's lead in combat and his cheer when taking down Jaguar Jetson. Focus on that. Mitch, I am better than you, too cool for my sunglasses and Williams, followed 5's lead openly and gleefully in a show of pure sentiment and enthusiasm. I mean, yeah, the sentiment was we like blasting robots with lasers, but still, that's a shining moment of character growth. And yet it is perfectly in character for 5. He isn't being rude or brusque. He offered his information when it was needed, quietly and calmly, and led when the path was clear. He was humble about his contribution. The biggest change is that he spent most of the final battle making his own snap decisions, and just to get there, he had to actively defy Miko. I did a whole video back in Season 2, when Season 2 dropped, going into how passive 5 was in Season 1. He seemed to not only do 2 things, react to other people and complete clearly defined duties that were right in front of them. He never initiated any adventure on his own. Over the course of Season 2, he's been forced into more and more situations where he had to step up and take more and more independent actions. That comes to a head in this episode when he actively steps away from Miko and goes out to do a mission, any mission on his own. And this episode really highlights what a change that was for him. When he steps out on his own, when he finds a mission without Miko, 5 is positively giddy with the adrenaline rush that this gives him, which shows 1, how much he depends on Miko, and 2, how much of a break it is with his usual habits to step away from her. This moment is game-changing for 5, even if it is perfectly in character with who he is. Likewise, Miko's moment is still in character for her. Yes, she surrenders her pride and steps away from her older identity to embrace her new identity. Yes, she shows profound compassion and love for another human being. But Miko's inherent self-absorption isn't just washed away in a moment. That monkey is still on her back and probably will be a besetting sin Miko has to fight for her entire life. In order to form that connection of compassion with her enemy, She had to see herself in him very literally. He had to not only look like her, sound like her, but he had to be doing the very things that she had been doing before before she really internalized that they shared a common humanity. It was beautiful and natural, and I think it was a near perfect storytelling. Now, my gushing over, let's do some nitpicking. First off, Word of Creator states that when physical matter is demolished by a glitch, it is repaired by overlaying a layer of pixels like spackle over damaged sheetrock. All well and good when you are talking about that hole that Mitch blasted in the suburban door, but the monster battle in today's episode took out an entire mountaintop. That would mean that Hinobi is going to have to generate and maintain a literal mountaintop using pixels and energy. That is going to be expensive, and it will doubtless attract glitches, because pixel energy is like catnip to them, as we learn in the next episode. So Hinobi just essentially created a haunted mountain. Next is a real nitpick. When Colossosaurus steps on the ground by Five's van, he leaves a massive footprint. And when they bump into the city power plant, the kaiju damage the concrete of the buildings. However, when Colossosaurus and Jaguar Jetson have a prolonged combat in a freshly plowed wheat field, they don't so much as disturb a row of the wheat. That field should have been a torn-up mess. But by the end of the episode, all of the rows are still in perfect alignment and perfectly formed. But, as Dan Milano said, these episodes are still solidly in Toontown, and the creators take advantage of that. Specifically, altering the background art for the fields would have been very expensive and time-consuming, and it is a perfectly logical place to cut, especially when the view is from that high up, and you can make the excuse that the resolution just isn't there for it. So yeah, that inconsistency is bothering me just a little, but it is bothering me. Then there's the bird incident. Yes, it was amusing. Yes, it illustrated how even when Fives is being the fiercest of warriors, he is still a tender caretaker. But that is not how bird eggs nor chick hatching work in the slightest little bit. Leaving it a whole egg that Five placed tenderly back in the nest at the end of the episode would have served all purposes just as well, and would not have defied the laws of ornithology biology. So, what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Is Miko a Plixel person? Is Mike a Plixel person? Did you catch the hint at the end that leads me to believe that they are? Will I ever be able to let that bird thing go, not just in this episode or this show, but throughout animation? Oh my goodness. Leave a like if you saw the hint. Leave a comment telling me who in Bailey you think is a Plixel person and who isn't. Check out the links below to find a heartbreaking book about fathers and sons. And peace out, my wonderful viewers. Also hit subscribe, please.